This is something new to me. I give a lot of talks on a lot of different subjects, but I rarely ever talk about my family. My family tends to be very private people, and I've honored that. But I think, with what we're discussing today, it's worthwhile just telling you my story. I don't have a lot of lessons to teach anybody. I certainly have a lot less experience professionally dealing with dementia than I think everybody else here. As a lawyer and as with a background in ethics, I've counseled a lot of people on these issues. But this is one of the things I really want to stress here is the difference, and Liz brought this out a bit, the difference between having an intellectual or academic appreciation of these issues and having a personal one when it comes to you personally or emotionally. So the other thing I want to talk about that I hope comes out here is the extent to which Alzheimer's disease and dementia generally happens to be really a disease of families, right? I like to say sometimes that we have Alzheimer's disease, not simply that my mother has Alzheimer's disease. But to explain more about this notion of this difference between intellectual and emotional appreciation of this, I'll just tell you my story. We also say sometimes that my family doesn't have a history of Alzheimer's disease. My family is the history of Alzheimer's disease. Because the things began with my mother's older sister, who I was at this time about 20 years old, when she began showing signs of dementia. And she had a husband and two sons, my two cousins, who dealt with things, so I wasn't very involved. I didn't know much, but in talking to my cousin afterwards, what I found was that he told me that his father actually was sabotaging his efforts to get his mother, my aunt, into care. Now, that's something that I understood intellectually, that family members, that, Alzheimer's isn't about one person, it's about many people in the family, and that indeed, certainly husbands, wives, don't necessarily want to lose their spouse, and so they will do what they can to keep them at home, even if it's not the best thing. Nonetheless, while appreciating that academically, intellectually, I didn't really understand what that could mean for me personally and my family, my immediate family. So the second thing that happened was my mother's younger sister, my mother's older sister, eventually died many years ago. My mother's younger sister, in about 2007, 2008, started showing signs of Alzheimer's disease. And she was very close to our family. She was very religious, a member of a religious order, so she didn't marry and didn't have kids. She was very close to us, and as a result, she gave me power of attorney over her affairs. At that time, I should have recognized personally my mother's response to this. I realized that my aunt, living alone, was in danger and that she needed to be in care. And my mother, who would never deny any sort of illness among people or never deny doing something about it, consistently downplayed and diminished what was happening with her younger sister, even though this had also happened with her older sister. So I should have recognized the degree to which people, even people who don't deny reality, are likely to avoid this or diminish this when it happens to somebody in their family. Nonetheless, I'm happy to say my mother didn't stand in my way. I did get my aunt into long-term care, and I tricked her into it, which I felt guilty about for a very long time. But I told her we're just going to look at this place for a tour, and we did. This was in 2010, but I had this plan that she would be staying there. And in fact, she is there now, still in 2016. She's been there 6 years. She's surprisingly healthy for somebody with advanced Alzheimer's disease. And she's done quite well with that. So I felt very guilty for a long time, and believe me, I heard from her in the early days. She said she wanted to go home, and she wasn't talking about going home to her mother's, to her parents. She was talking about going home to the home that I took her out of, her own home. So it was very stressful, but it's worked out very well. And the main thing is, as I say, I should have recognized what happened with my older aunt and my younger aunt, that people have a great capacity to deny what's happening to their relatives, particularly when it's a cognitive issue. So then it comes to my mother. So my aunt, as I say, was admitted to long-term care in 2010. In about 2011, 2012, my mother began showing symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. I should have, and I realized this given what happened at that time, previous to 2012, I should have had a straightforward talk with both my parents about what could happen to any of us and about getting very specific instructions about what to do. I always thought this wouldn't be a big issue. I would know what my mother wanted to do because my mother, like her sisters, is a very devout Roman Catholic, and I figured I would just do what the Catholic faith said, and that would help me through any sort of ethical dilemmas. And indeed that has. But the problem I had in thinking that way is I was thinking that Alzheimer's was my mother's problem, that this was a disease of one person rather than a disease of the family. Even having seen the way in which my family members reacted to their family members when they started showing symptoms of this, I didn't appreciate emotionally how important it was to address this within the entire family. The result has been the last 4 years have been among the most stressful years of my life, and undoubtedly the most stressful years of my father's life, because my father refused to acknowledge for 4 years, that my mother needed care, either in-home care or care, more likely care in a long-term care home. So he spent the last 4 years caring for her. I don't know how he did it, but he consistently denied me the ability to do something about this. This is something that I believe now I understand I should have been more assertive about it, but most of all, I should have been assertive early on before this became a problem, particularly given what I was aware of. But my emotional appreciation as a member of this family, prevented me from doing what I really should have done. So my parents lived in their own home, for 4 years with my father. Good days, he was saying, I can take care of her, everything's fine, you don't have to do anything. Bad days, calling me, saying, I don't know what to do. And this is in Toronto, my parents live in Toronto, saying, I don't know what to do, I need help, I need to get her some kind of help. And then I'd begin that process, and then, of course, things would change, and then he'd be able to take care of her, according to him. So I had her on the list for long-term care for over a year for a preferred home that we wanted to get her into. This is the same home her sister's in, and I found out that my father, after a year, had taken her off the list. He told me himself, I didn't have to find out any other way, but he told me after the fact. So we had to start the process again. Now, this makes me feel guilty too, but I'm happy to say my mother's no longer at home. January 29th, she had a stroke, which was her third stroke. It was interesting hearing Serge Gauthier talk about strokes playing a factor in this. She had a small stroke that resulted in her going to the hospital, and at that time, once again, hiding things. I didn't tell my father, but I went to the doctors. I said, she cannot go home again. And so she has been in the hospital for the last 3 months. I've been there for the last 3 months with her. She is much better in terms of her affect, much better emotionally, and I think also even perhaps a little better cognitively than she was at home when she was getting no stimulation whatsoever. So this story, I guess, could be cautionary that having, an academic appreciation of all these issues is really not enough, and it certainly wasn't enough for me because I screwed up repeatedly, not recognizing how our family would react to this, and I was a part of that. So that's why I really say Alzheimer's is a disease of families. Certainly it was a disease of my family. My mother now will either remain in the hospital, she has other health challenges, or possibly go to a long-term care home. That's taken care of, but obviously this is not the way I think things operate ideally, and I'm ashamed to say, for someone who knows something about this. And my sister, who's been involved, is in fact an oncologist herself, and we both screwed this up as a result of simply not having a personal, emotional appreciation of what this disease is about. I'll just leave you with one postscript. My father now has had Parkinson's disease for a very long time, and he is now showing signs of Parkinson's-related dementia. So I came here for this conference and for a couple of other talks I had to give. I have to go back, and hopefully this third or fourth time I can get this right. Stay tuned. Perhaps next year we can revisit this and I'll tell you how things turned out. Anyway, thank you very much.